Hello there, you're watching All 24 World News program live from Algiers. These are the top stories. Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune receives the Secretary of the Security Council of the Russian Federation. Also coming up, representatives in the second meeting of the Call of the Sahel praise Algeria's new development plan in Africa. Also ahead, the 47th anniversary of the Sahrawi Republic proclamation witnesses a recall of the diplomatic and military gains on the path of liberation. And Palestinian is shot and killed as settlers and Zionist army burned dozens of houses in the occupied West Bank. Hello again and welcome to the program. First off in our news, Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, Supreme Head of the Armed Forces, Minister of National Defense, received on Monday the Secretary of the Security Council of the Russian Federation, Mr. Nikolai Patrushev. The reception was attended by Major General, Chief of Staff of the National People's Army, Mr. Saïd Chengriha, the Private Principal Secretary to the Presidency, Mr. Abdelaziz Khalaf, and Mr. Boumediene Benatou, Advisor to the President of the Republic in charge of affairs related to defense and security. Major General Saïd Chengriha, Chief of Staff of the People's National Army, also received the Secretary of the Security Council of the Russian Federation, Mr. Nikolai Patrushev, on Monday at the headquarters of the People's National Army. The two parties held talks on the state of military cooperation between Algeria and Russia and discussed also together ways and means to enhance it. They also exchanged analysis and views on issues of common concern. President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, granted on Monday the Algerian citizenship to the Archbishop of Algeria, John Paul Fiasco, by presidential decree. According to the text of the decree, the naturalization of John Paul Fiasco comes in implementation of the Algerian legislation in force, especially the conditions stipulated in the Algerian national or nationality law. Jean-Paul was appointed Archbishop of Algeria in December 2021 after working there for 20 years, defending the rights of peoples, religious coexistence and dialogue of civilizations based on his training in advocacy and law. To a different story now, the second meeting of the Call of the Sahel organized by the Inter-Parliamentary Union in coordination with the Algerian Parliament concluded on Monday in Algiers, with many representatives and delegations praising Algeria's new development plan that allocates $1 billion to enhance development projects in Africa, calling it a road towards achieving stability and true independence for African countries. The closing statement of the Sahel meeting praised the valuable contribution of Algeria and the Algerian president as a leader in the African Union in the field of combating terrorism and within the framework of the United Nations Global Counterterrorism Strategy. The closing statement also affirmed that the participants in the meeting's work affirmed their commitment to achieving goals aimed at strengthening dialogue within society and between societies in order to create an environment of trust, communication, coordination, and living in peace. In a speech addressed to the Sahrawi people on the occasion of the celebration of the 47th anniversary of the proclamation of the Sahrawi Republic, President Ghali said that the establishment phase witnessed a response to what he described as malicious conspiracy, whose signs and manifestations were revealed and aimed at the absolute elimination of Western Sahara as a homeland, with a shameful struggle from the Spanish colonial power and its partners in injustice and tyranny, as he put it. And that regards the Moroccan expansionist regime as well. Moving on, regarding the Morocco Gate scandal and its negative effects on previous decisions and positions of the European Union regarding the conflict in Western Sahara, the Sahrawi president called on the European Union to expedite taking appropriate steps and procedures to uncover the facts and hold the perpetrators accountable, and to adopt a fair position consistent with international law.
With regard to Morocco scandal and its negative effects on previous decisions and positions of the European Union regarding the conflict in Western Sahara, Sahrawi president called on the European Union to expedite taking appropriate steps and procedures to uncover the facts and hold the perpetrators accountable, and to adopt a fair position consistent with international law.
During the 47th anniversary of the proclamation of the Sahrawi Republic, which celebrates the diplomatic and military gains on the path to liberation, President Ghali confronting the conspiracies of abolishing the homeland. Here's Salman Nasib with more.
During the 47th anniversary of the proclamation of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic at the Smara refugee camp, voices of Sahrawi people calling for independence and freedom were raised. The celebrations were attended by the Sadr government, foreign delegations from Algeria, South Africa, and other countries, with the presence of large crowds of Sahrawi people. On this occasion, President Ghali reiterated Sadr's full readiness to fulfill its international commitments towards peace, security, stability in the country and the rest of the world.
The Sahrawi Republic on its 47th anniversary, as it continues to progress steadily on the path of building, consolidating its position and completing its control over its entire international territory, renews its full readiness to fulfill its international obligations towards peace, security and stability in the region and the world.
However, President Brahim Ghali warned on the consequences of the aggressive and expansionist policies of the Moroccan occupation state and the tension and instability it sought, whether by supporting and encouraging transnational organized crime gangs and terrorist groups with drugs and others. He also underlined his country's firm, principled positions alongside peoples fighting against all forms of injustice, colonialism and tyranny, adhering to the values and principles of the Charter and resolutions of the United Nations and the African Union. Indeed, the commemoration of this memory testifies for the diplomatic and military victories achieved by the Sahrawi leadership and the Liberation Army against the Moroccan occupation forces since the resumption of the armed struggle on the 13th of November of the year 2020.
To the Libyan file now, the head of the Libyan National Unity Government, Mr. Abdelhamid Dbeiba, said that efforts of the international community to call for elections that resolve the country's crisis were consistent with his government's demands in ending the transitional phase. Dbeiba appreciated all efforts made by Libya's friends and the UN mission to push for fair elections to end the political turmoil in the country.
I applaud all efforts made by the Friends of Libya and the United Nations Support Mission in Libya to advance the achievement of fair national elections, consistent with our demand for ending the transition, continue to provide services to all our people, keeping peace and calling for elections.
In Libya still, the UN Secretary General for Libya, Abdullah Bathily, said on Monday that the UN will step up its efforts to unite the various factions in Libya in order to facilitate the long-delayed presidential and parliamentary elections this year. Bathily informed the Security Council that the initiative would also involve civil society, key political figures, tribal leaders, and other concerned groups and organizations.
Of the 2011 revolution, it is our mandate to support Libyans in their aspirations to realize their goals for a stable country led by authorities dedicated to its population well-being. Inclusive and transparent national elections to be held in 2023 are a key step in that direction. I reiterate my request for the Council to express its support to my suggested way forward to fulfill the aspirations of the Libyan, which has been signed and published in the official gazette a few days ago, is controversial within the Libyan political class and general citizenry.
To the latest to Palestine, a Palestinian was shot dead and others, settlers backed by the Zionist army, actually burned dozens of houses and cars in the occupied West Bank in revenge attacks. And this provoked a wide reaction by foreign countries as well as bodies. Let's see Islam Said in this report with more.
Zionist settlers carry on their violence against Palestinians and keep on vandalizing their properties. One Palestinian was killed and more than 100 others were injured in the northern occupied West Bank. The attack was carried out in front of the Zionist soldiers who did nothing to stop them but watching. The Palestinian government described the Holocaust as a total war against the Palestinians and affirmed its continued pursuit of the Zionist occupation in international courts.
We lived a horrific night yesterday in which settlers committed the worst types of crimes, including killing, burning and intimidating children and women. In the light of the heinous crimes committed by the fascist settlers, with the instructions of Israeli government, we hold this government fully responsible about these crimes in Huwara and the rest of the surrounding villages, and this will be added to the file of Israel's trial in the international courts.
The Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs called on the international community to intervene and affirmed that these crimes are being sponsored by the occupation army, warning of the repercussions in Palestine, the region and the world.
Israeli Jewish terrorist groups chanted death to Arabs and danced on the rubble of burned homes and the bodies of dead and injured Palestinians, all while protected by Israeli occupying forces. This Jewish settler terrorism is state-sponsored. It's financially, diplomatically and politically facilitated and supported by every branch of Israel's government and celebrated by Israeli officials.
The Arab League also held the Zionist government fully responsible for the horrific crimes of armed settler militias in the towns and villages in the West Bank.
This escalation is translation for the official positions and statements of extreme right-wing Israeli government led by Benjamin Netanyahu. These positions and statements of this government contain intimidation, threats, racism, and incitement against Palestinian existence and rights.
Many Western states condemned settlers' violence against Palestinians, including the United States, Canada, the UK and the EU, and called on the Zionist government to tackle settler violence, with those responsible brought to justice. The rampage took place following Sunday's talks in Jordan, where the parties had agreed to take steps to de-escalate tensions ahead of the holy month of Ramadan.
To UK now, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak struck a new deal with the European Union on post-Brexit trade rules for Northern Ireland on Monday and said it would pave the way for a new chapter in London's relationship with the bloc. Standing alongside the European Commission, President Ursula von der Leyen at a news conference in Windsor, Sunak said the two sides had agreed to remove any sense of a border between Britain and its province, a situation that had angered politicians on both sides.
New arrangements on Ireland and Northern Ireland. This new framework will allow us...
I welcomed President von der Leyen to Windsor to continue our discussions about the Northern Ireland Protocol. I'm pleased to report that we have now made a decisive breakthrough. Together, we have changed the original protocol and are today announcing the new Windsor framework. Today's agreement delivers smooth-flowing trade within the whole United Kingdom, protects Northern Ireland's place in our union, and safeguard sovereignty for the people of Northern Ireland.
A magnitude of 5.6 earthquake struck eastern Turkey, resulted in at least one fatality and numerous injuries and the collapse of some damaged structures. Meanwhile, the World Bank published that the earthquakes in Turkey caused material damage that are estimated at 34.2 billion US dollars on Monday. This glimpse of the economic consequences, although temporary, already represent 4% of Turkey's GDP in 2021. Turkish foreign minister said on Monday talks with Sweden and Finland over their NATO membership bids would resume on March the 9th, although he said Sweden had still not fulfilled its obligations under a memorandum signed last year. Turkey in January cancelled talks with Sweden and Finland on their applications after a Danish far-right politician burned a copy of the Quran outside the Turkish embassy in Stockholm.
We held 2 meetings with Sweden. We cancelled the 3rd meeting after the Quran burning action, and because the conditions were not suitable at the time. It will be beneficial to have the new meeting in Brussels soon, because the NATO Secretary General and some of our allies have been saying that the laws have been changed in Sweden, and they have been making statements that they should now become members.
To Russia-Ukraine file now, Russia threatened to withdraw from the grain export agreement from Black Sea ports in case the signatories do not comply with the terms once implemented and expired on March 18th, at a time when Ukraine expressed hope that the agreement would be extended for at least another year. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said on Monday that Russia is interested by the Chinese peace plan, while the Russian Foreign Ministry announced that South Korea's joining sanctions package will affect the bilateral relations between the two nations. Here's Sofian Kenturi with more.
The conflict in Ukraine doesn't seem to be solved anytime soon. In fact, while the sanctions are piling against Russia, and the Western solidarity toward Ukraine keeps on growing in the form of financial and military aid, the Ukrainian ranks still look shaky. First off, in reaction to the Chinese peace plan to settle the conflict in Ukraine, the Kremlin said it was interesting, but the necessary conditions for a peaceful solution are not yet fulfilled.
Any attempts to develop plans that will contribute to bringing peace to this conflict deserve attention. We are giving the plan suggested by our Chinese friends a great deal of attention. We repeat once again that at a time we do not see any prerequisites for this whole story to head in the direction of peace. The special military operation continues.
The Kremlin also described the new sanctions imposed by the European Union on Russia a year after the start of the military operation in Ukraine as absurd. For her part, the spokeswoman for the Russian Foreign Ministry, Maria Zakharova, published a statement on the ministry's platform, in which she expressed her disappointment over the commercial sanctions imposed by South Korea, and she added that such an act would affect the bilateral relations between the two countries.
Undoubtedly, this will harm the existing cooperation between the two nations, which has already suffered dangerously after the Republic of Korea joined the first package of the mass sanctions of the West.
Meanwhile, in Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky's office announced on Monday the dismissal of General Eduard Moskalev from the position of commander of the so-called Joint Forces operation without announcing the reasons of dismissal. This is a usual act from Kiev's presidency, noting that last month he had sacked a number of heads of military departments in the Ukrainian provinces from their positions due to their link to corruption cases.
Spokeswoman for the Chinese Foreign Ministry Mao Ning said during a press conference in Beijing on Monday, in response to the U.S. sanctions against Chinese companies on Friday over their alleged ties to Russia, that the United States' unilateral sanctions against Chinese companies are hypocritical. Mao added that Beijing resolutely rejects the U.S. sanctions against Chinese companies and will take necessary countermeasures.
The relevant conduct of the United States has no basis of international law, nor it is authorized by the Security Council. It is a typical case of illegal unilateral sanction and long-arm jurisdiction, which seriously undermines China's interests. China is strongly dissatisfied with it and resolutely opposes it, and has lodged stern representations with the U.S. side.
美方一边变本加厉。
Mexico's president launched new barbs on Monday at his Peruvian counterpart, describing her as a puppet of oligarchs in the latest escalation of tensions between the two nations over the resignation of Castillo, Peru's former president. On the other hand, earlier this week, Peruvian President Dina Boluarte announced on Friday the definitive withdrawal of Peru's ambassador to Mexico after Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador made remarks branding her government as unconstitutional.
I'm glad to say that we have had 31 pledges announced today. These pledges come to just about $1.2 billion. Thank you very much indeed to those who have pledged. I should add that last year, in a similar occasion, reached about the same amount against about the same budget.
For more news making headlines around the globe, here's the news in brief, this time by Zahra Fajani.
Rescuers recovered 3 more bodies on Monday, a day after a wooden sailboat carrying migrants to Europe smashed onto rocks in stormy weather off southern Italy, bringing the death toll to 62, including at least 14 children. Dozens more were believed to be missing. Forest fires have consumed some 1,700 hectares in Cuba, according to authorities, as firefighters, planes and Defense Force helicopters work to extinguish a large-scale forest fire which has been raging for 10 days onto the east of the island. The blaze has consumed large areas and caused extensive damage to forest plantations. A series of tornadoes has lashed the central United States, leaving a trail of wreckage and injuries as winter storms continue to cause extreme weather around the country. The National Weather Service reported 9 tornadoes has swept through Kansas, Oklahoma, and northwest Texas on Sunday night, flipping cars and bringing down trees and power lines. Locals in a central Greek town doused each other with colored flour on Monday as part of an old carnival tradition. The flower war pits revels against each other with tons of cooking flour tinted with food coloring. Hundreds participated in the event in the coastal fishing town of Galaxidi, about 200 kilometers west of Athens.
Well, that's the end of our news for today. For more, you can always visit our social media platforms. From me and the rest of the team, thank you for tuning in, and bye for now.